Bunyan Meeting, a church planted in fertile soil. In 1672, an agreement was made between a certain Josias Roughhead, shoemaker, and John Bunyan, brazier, etc., for the purchase of a barn with a piece of ground adjoining it in the parishes of St. Paul and St. Cuthbert. The site is shown on this map by John Speed, dated 1610. St. Cuthbert's is just to the northeast, and to the south are the remains of Bedford Castle. The castle mound is still there today. Indeed, it is said that the lovely garden at Bunyan Meeting has such fertile soil because it was originally in part of the castle moat. The old church of St. Cuthbert's, though a very ancient foundation, is said to have been small and mean in Bunyan's day. Bedford already had a strong tradition of independence. The town was a parliamentary stronghold during the English Civil War, staunchly opposed to the royalist cause. So this was also fertile ground for the gathering of a nonconformist congregation as early as 1650, under the ministry of John Gifford, identifiable as evangelist in Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress. 3 years later, Gifford was appointed to St. John's Church, shown here to the south of Speed's map, and his congregation met there for several years until the whole political situation changed with the restoration of King Charles II to the throne in 1660. From this point, it became illegal to worship except in accordance with the Church of England. Now, the congregation found itself homeless. They began meeting in the houses of church members, many of them local traders like Roughhead, or in the surrounding villages, always in fear of discovery. These secret church services were frequently broken up, and the members had to flee at a moment's notice. During this period, John Bunyan, but also other leaders, were imprisoned. King Charles relented slightly, and in 1672 published the first Declaration of Indulgence, which permitted nonconformists to worship without fear of persecution. So John Bunyan, released from prison, and his fellow leaders lost no time in purchasing the barn and getting it licensed as a place of worship. At last, the church had its own home, on the site where it still worships today. Bunyan died in 1688. By then, he was a well-known preacher in and around Bedford and as far afield as London. His most famous book, The Pilgrim's Progress, had run into 11 editions and had already been translated into French and Dutch. A Welsh edition also came out in 1688. By the time of his death, the congregation was well established and retained many of the characteristics of its most famous founding member: a strong faith, a passion for preaching and mission, and, it has to be said, a disputatious nature. A historical note from 1788 quotes from the book of Genesis, describing the church of this time as a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. And so it proved. The church on the edge of town, meeting in a barn in a field, took root in its fertile soil, grew, and began to bear fruit, as we shall see. Some 30 years after the purchase, they replaced the barn with a church building. The new building was hardly visible from the road because the land fell away towards the river and the church was low and crowded with pews. A historical sketch from 1831 records that the gallery was so near the ceiling as to be very unpleasing to the eye and doubtless very injurious to the health of the congregation. Worshippers were drawn from the town itself and the surrounding villages. Over the next few generations, they engaged in vigorous activity. Several members left sums in their wills to support the ministry, which is entirely paid for by the congregation, then as now. But most also included 50% or more to be given as grants to the poor. Waterloo was a notoriously poor area on the north bank of the river, demolished in the development of the embankment. John Howard had joined the church and bought the adjoining Howard House in 1767. His programme of prison reform began in Bedford, but spread throughout Britain and Europe and transformed the lives of prisoners. But Howard was also reluctantly party to a split in the church and the formation of another congregation a few yards along Mill Street. Both buildings are in this image. And there was also a later split from which emerged a Baptist church, also on Mill Street, thus inadvertently increasing the strength of nonconformity in the town. By the 1840s, under the energetic ministry of John Jukes, the church was training young people for mission in the burgeoning overseas work of the London Missionary Society, whose work still continues in new ways through its successor body, CWM. And Bunyan Meeting and Howard Church were active in a new form of home mission, as Sunday schools sprang up in churches, aimed initially at the children of the poor. At the same time, mission churches were established in the surrounding villages. This, at Elstow, is the only one of these still active as a church. It was a time of great expansion for urban areas all over Britain, and Bedford was no exception. The town and population more than doubled in size and put in hand a programme of improvements to replace crowded dwellings and insanitary conditions with paved streets, public amenities and commodious buildings. The present building at Bunyan Meeting was erected in 1849 and continues to accommodate a congregation, successor to those who, after years of being hunted from house to house, bought the barn in Mill Street and went on to establish a powerful Christian presence in a nonconformist town. In his brief history of the church, Jukes writes, "This has always been a working church. Activity seems to have been not more its duty than its delight. Its influence upon the town and neighbourhood for good has been such as eternity alone can make known." And looking to the future, he writes, "If pastures plant and people water, God will surely give the increase." This is our hope in the Bunyan Meeting of today.